The Trump administration made history when it charged Julian Assange for publishing unflattering truths about U.S. foreign policy in the early 2010s. It's the first time the U.S. government has used the Espionage Act to charge a journalist, and many Americans see it as a serious threat to the free press.
It's the criminalization of journalism by the Trump Justice Department and the gravest threat to press freedom by far under the Trump presidency.
Meanwhile, CNN's chief White House correspondent Jim Acosta is promoting his book about preserving truth and the First Amendment under the Trump presidency. But he hasn't said a word about the Assange case. So at a book signing event inside the Newseum, the First Amendment Museum in Washington, D.C., I asked Jim Acosta about just that.
And you have your video camera there, so this is going to be a doozy.
Well, we'll see.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Just before your book came out, something happened that the Washington Post, the New York Times, and many Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists have recognized as an existential threat to the free press. What are your thoughts on the Trump administration's use of the controversial Espionage Act to indict the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange for publishing classified information in the early 2010s that exposed war crimes, informed the public, and didn't harm anyone?
I appreciate that question. I'm probably not going to give you a satisfactory answer, but I'm going to do the best that I can. I've been asked this question before. I take it from your question and your enthusiasm that you may be a Julian Assange supporter or a WikiLeaks supporter. Perhaps that's not the case. Maybe you're just asking the question. I don't know.
In general, I support anybody speaking truth to power.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I do think, and forgive me if you don't agree with me on this, but I do think what happened with us and my press pass case is slightly different than what happened with Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And I can try to talk about that for a few moments, but I don't want to drag it on out forever and ever, and then everybody else doesn't get a chance to get their questions asked. But I'll do the best that I can. My understanding about the Julian Assange situation is that, he is being charged not just for trying to speak truth to power and trying to reveal things. He is in trouble for other things. And, what we've seen during the 2016 campaign, where there were contacts between WikiLeaks and Russian operatives, that I think takes WikiLeaks and Julian Assange into sort of a different category than just a straight news organization, straight publisher of news around the world. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not rendering a verdict on Julian Assange. I think he should have his day in court. I think we should see what the facts are, see what they're presented, and let a court let that process play out. I do think that there is a value in whistleblowers, no question about it, and I do think that there is a value in people inside the government dealing with journalists to shine a light on government secrets. No question about it. I mean, during the writing of this book, you can imagine how there are Trump folks who were deeply fearful of speaking on the record with me. I only got a couple of folks who speak on the record with me. Most of them wanted to speak on background. I talked to a national security official with the Trump administration who told me that he didn't know whether or not President Trump was pursuing U.S. interests and was concerned about some of the things that he was doing in terms of his dealings with Vladimir Putin. This official obviously would not be able to talk about those kinds of things on the record. He would be in a lot of trouble. But we need that kind of information. And so I do understand what Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, what the spirit of what they were trying to do, but I can't sit here and endorse everything that they've done and the tactics that they've used to go about presenting the information that they gather to the world. And I hope you can appreciate where I'm coming from on that. That's really all I have to say on the topic.
But I'm specifically asking, thank you for your response.
I'm trying to be as thoughtful as I can.
But specifically, I asked about the indictments under the Espionage Act.
Yeah.
Not allegations of Russian.
Obviously, the Espionage Act.
Which the Mueller
obviously
report,
federal laws should not be abused to punish journalists and punish publishers of information. But I can't on the fly here interpret what is going on in the Julian Assange case and give you a satisfactory answer that's going to make you feel as though I'm siding with him.
Just what do you think? Should journalists or be put in prison for publishing classified information? That's the question. Just for publishing classified information. That's the question. That was the question.
Let me think about that. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
After the talk, Acosta continued to speak with members of the audience on stage. I waited behind the last person had spoken to him before asking again for a solid answer. Just a quick follow-up, Jim.
No, sorry.
My man, I'm sorry, I can't do it. Yeah.
Sorry.
Should journalists be jailed for publishing classified information?
You cannot come back here, sir. I'm sorry.
As I waited in line to get my book signed, security pulled me out of the line because they were concerned I would ask a question.
There's some concern that you may not have a book to sign, and they believe that you may ask questions.
I may have a what? Sorry, I didn't.
You don't have a book to sign?
Oh, I do. No, absolutely do. Absolutely.
But they're not taking any questions. That's what they're.
I understand. I have a book to get signed. I'm gonna get the book signed.
I'm just advising you. That's all.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Banner, wave you want.
I appreciate it. The board. You got a book. At least you bought a book. Thanks for doing it.
Fill it out to Grandma Rose.
To Grandma.
And I'm not going to hound you, but I think you really should look into the espionage charges specifically against Assange, because it's for obtaining and publishing classified information, and it has anything to do with Russia.
I'll take a look at it, but thank you.
Please do.
Thank you so much for coming.
The fact that CNN's chief White House correspondent talks as if the indictment against Assange has to do with Russia and the 2016 election may explain why so many Americans are misinformed about the Assange case. Interestingly enough, the same material Assange is actually being prosecuted for publishing is memorialized inside the very same building we were in. WikiLeaks released the material in 2010, revealing secrets about the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, in much the same way the Pentagon Papers revealed embarrassing government secrets about the Vietnam War. Another common misconception about the Assange case is the false assumption that Assange would receive a fair trial if extradited to the US.
I think he should have his day in court. I think we should see what the facts are, see what they're presented, and let a court let that process play out.
However, in recent Espionage Act cases, prosecutors have convinced courts that the intent of the leaker, the value of the leaks to the public, and the lack of harm caused by the leaks are irrelevant and therefore inadmissible in court. So even though the information was in the public's interest to know, and even though no individual was physically harmed as a result of the publications, just the fact that Assange published information that the government wanted to keep secret to avoid embarrassment and accountability may be enough to send him to jail for life under the Espionage Act. That would set a dangerous precedent, effectively making it a crime for any journalist to expose government secrets.
This is, to put it bluntly, wrong, unconstitutional, and downright tyrannical.
After Acosta was done signing books, I asked him again if he was okay with jailing journalists for publishing the truth.
I'm now meeting.
Hey, Jim. No. Can we?
I know, but I'm now meeting with some students from Chicago, so I can't.
Yeah, let's take a picture. He already answered your question, and it's just rude. You're just yelling, and it's rude.
You are a rude, terrible person.
Are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person.
And it's rude.
We should a journalist go to prison for life.
Jim Acosta, hi. You guys with the University of Chicago?
They want to escort you out of the building now. He wants to escort you.
Please share this video and tell Jim Acosta on Twitter that if he really wants to fight for the truth, hold Trump accountable, and preserve the First Amendment, he needs to call out and challenge President Trump on his administration's unprecedented attack on truth, government accountability, and the First Amendment, with its use of the Espionage Act to prosecute Julian Assange for practicing journalism. I'm at Orfalea. Thanks for watching.
What Julian Assange has done is what media outlets say they're supposed to do, which is bring transparency to the world's most powerful factions.
I don't believe you can have a democracy without aggressive investigative reporting and without freedom of the press.
I think you need crusaders. I think you need crusaders right now more than ever.
All those who hold power should be held accountable.
Whether it's text, whether it's documents, whether it's emails, whether it's John Podesta's theoretical calendar that shows meetings that are newsworthy. I think the information trumps all.
Let us make sure that those who resist and fight back, like Julian, do not become martyrs to a lost cause.
No, he's fine. As long as no other, no other engagement like that. He's good. He's good.